Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon, which is a company run by Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer. Guest on this podcast. We really appreciate Joe Ross's support in the Black Knight Nation podcast. And we have a great guest on today to talk some Army football. We have Tony Morino, Army football radio sideline reporter. And Tony just told me this is going to be his 25th season of Army football, which is incredible, Tony. Thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, no problem. Definitely. It feels like kind of first yesterday where like yesterday, I attended that the first practice or first press event back in 98, but 25 years of covering this team. And then I believe it's the last 13 on the sideline. It's been a good time, a great time, I should say, a great crew to be around. And of course, over the years with all the guys I've met, including yourself here, that have covered the team. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I want to give you a quick shout out. I might not be doing this podcast or this kind of stuff if it wasn't for you. I mean, my second year at the paper, I think I remember you invited me on your Cable 6 show to talk some high school football. I barely knew Section 9 football at the time. I'm like, sure, I'll come on, be a great chance for me. And I don't think I'm made for the camera, Tony, to be honest with you, but it was, you kind of got me like some confidence that I could do some of this stuff like on camera, so to speak. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, we all have a fraternity too. We've all been media members. Other side, what did I say? When you go to the other side, it's a dark side. That's not true. Once you're on that side, it's a pretty good fraternity. So definitely.
No doubt. I mean, there's so much to talk to, but maybe did you I never asked you this, but did you grow up around West Point? Are you an Orange County guy? I mean, did you know a little bit about Army football before you got all started and stuff, or?
I did. So I grew up, I went to Valley Central School, so local there in Montgomery. I grew up in Orange County, just went away to school up in Oswego and then came back. But a lifelong Orange County guy. One of my first memories is going to an Army football game with a guy named Joe Deneen, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys that watch the podcast around West Point that would know that name. But was in a Boy Scout troop with his son, and they put together a trip, whether it be hockey, basketball, football. My first memory is a Vanderbilt game, and I think it was 85 or 86. I have to go back and look at the schedule. I've done that before. I just can't remember it. But I remember going to games when I was younger, always following. I remember watching Army Navy games when I was 7 and 8 years old, like going back that far. Just remember always paid attention to them, always ran to the paper the next day to see, how they did on a Saturday. So grew up in the area and definitely always had, an affinity for Army and what went on at West Point. And of course, not just the sports, definitely in the sports, but just everything that was going on up there.
Yeah, so I guess when you get the opportunity to be a part of an Army broadcast, I guess that's something that you kind of just jump on, right? I mean, it's just that was kind of a no-brainer for you, so to speak, or?
Right. So what had happened was in 99, the late Bob Bowder, and still missed the Big O, but him and I got talking at one of the football luncheons, and I said, hey, I did hockey for a few years up in college. If you're ever looking for somebody to fill in for hockey, and that opened the door. So I done hockey from 99 I think 2009, right? And I was, my kids were, had a third on the way, and just I needed to be around home more. And somebody said, hey, we've got an opening over on the football side. Would you consider it? And I'm like, wow, Army football, and going back to like, just think about being able to be with Army, be involved with Army football and be on the sideline. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. It fit with my with personal life and work life at the time. And that's when I came over the football, and it's just been awesome. It's, started with Rich Ellerson for football on the sidelines. And certainly, can't say enough. He was always good, always open, with that. But watching the program turn the way it has under Jeff Monken, and thinking about the early years of covering team, Bob Sutton, who's still one of my favorite people, just people all around. But then after that, Todd Berry came in, and then of course there was the Bobby Ross era, all of that. But and not as close to the football team during that time. Of course, went to games, helped out some people that were still in the media and all that. But at the same time, just watching and what Coach Monken has done here and the change that's been made since he's taken over. I mean, it makes me think back to those 80s and early 90s when Army football and to me, because that's when I grew up, those were the glory years. But these are truly the glory years in what we've had. Of course, last year notwithstanding, but certainly the years that Coach Monken has had here, and I'm excited for what's ahead this year. The changes that are in place, and you want to see it develop. You want to see it's something new, so you always want to see something new out there. So certainly excited about it. But it's been a fun ride, and it's far from over as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we're talking about that shotgun offense, and camp opens up on Wednesday, Tony. So we got to see some of it in the spring a little bit. Got to see a little bit of it in the spring game, but it's not like they're unveiling the playbook in the spring. Who knows who's in the stands, to watch and that kind of stuff, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on it? I mean, what do you think we're going to get from Army?
I think just listening to a couple of the interviews and stuff, I think you're still going to get Army football is about being tough. Coach Monken's about being tough. So all this stuff about there's going to be a single back and there's the shotgun and that's going to change. They're going to go back trying to do what they did when they went into Conference USA. That's not it. It's still about smash mouth, and I like what they're saying. They're saying the right things. Look, the more wrinkles you have, the better chance for success you have. And it's a little bit more than a wrinkle. Let's call it a wave, right? That they're bringing in, but they can lean back on the option when they need to. They're just more, I think it makes them more versatile. I'm excited about it. And here's why I'm excited, because I know the guy that's putting the offense in, and I'm talking about Coach Monken, meaning he brought the right people in to do it. But look at his success that he's had here in his history, right? Just, you think he's going to do it the wrong way? If anybody's going to do it the right way, it's Coach Monken. And that's what I believe in. Just in being around, if there's ever a guy I'd want to put this into place, it's Coach Monken, and just the success he's had everywhere he's been. And that's why I believe that, that it's going to work and they're going to have success with it. It's, listen, it's going to come down to personnel and making sure that they understand it. There'll be some growing pains. There's no doubt. And I could probably spot some of the growing pains on their schedule looking at it together with you. But certainly there's going to be some growing pains, but I think it's the right move to make sure that they stay competitive for years to come. It's the right move right now.
Yeah, and my eyes, this is just me talking, a little bit predictable. The offense became a little bit predictable at times with the triple option. I mean, going to fullback a lot. In my personal opinion, the guys on the outside did not get the ball enough. I'm not saying you're going to throw the ball 10, 15 times to Isaiah Alston or Ijon Marshall, but those guys are playmakers. And if you get a healthy Tyrell Robinson back, who knows? And yeah, I think Tyson Riley is capable of playing that single back. What happens to Jacoby Buchanan? I don't know personally. Is he just a short yardage guy? But that's what's going to make defenses kind of have to prepare a little bit more, I think. And if they can get this all together, to start, Louisiana Monroe, Delaware State, there's a little bit of a feeling out process in those two games, I'm guessing, and see if they can, like you say, can hit the ground and run with this.
Yeah, and again, it's about those guys learning the system. But think about this, Sal. You talked about when you and I were on that TV show. If we didn't evolve in our careers or as professionals, and we were still back there, and you were still, in the newspaper business, so to speak, right, or I was still even on the TV side. If we didn't evolve, you wouldn't. So for Jeff Monken, if he doesn't evolve, and for his staff, if they don't evolve, then the program's not going to evolve, and it's going to be where the down years were, or even worse, right? So I think it's part of the evolution. You have to be able to do that. It's been tried before; it didn't work out. But like I said, if there's a guy that can do it, I believe it's Jeff Monken, and the guy and the staff that he's put around him. Bringing in another coordinator, co-coordinators this year, but just Nate Woody, I think the world of him and what he's done, and even hearing the guys on the offensive side talk about how it's tougher to do anything against Coach Woody's defense, even in practice, right? I mean, that tells me that a lot of the right guys are here. Jeff Monken has his guys here, and that's why I think it's no better time than to put a new wave into place in this offense that they're bringing in.
Yeah, why not? And now you look at a guy like Bryson Daly, who sat behind a couple of experienced quarterbacks. Now it's kind of his opportunity, so to speak, and we'll see what happens. I mean, Bryson showed us some, a couple flashes last year when he got a chance, and you see him in practice, you see him, during warmups, he certainly looks the part, and it seems like this system could be fit for him. And we'll see what happens. The thing is that the quarterback room is not so much the most experienced now, right, Tony? I mean, you got him. You got Alex Meredith, who I think Alex Meredith has a lot of I want to say potential because he's an upperclassman. There's some good things that can come out of Alex Meredith, I think. So we'll see how it's going to be an interesting preseason, even under center, I think, for Army.
Yeah, you talk a lot of personnel, and I hear the names, of course, and I know Rich DeMarco and Dean Darling, the play-by-play in color, they're really up on that. What I try to do from a sideline standpoint is really what the day presents. You have to know who might be nicked up and all that stuff, but to me, it's like what the day presents and potentially what those guys' strengths are, and I get that in a lot of our production meetings. So when I look at these guys go through training camp, you want to know what happened, especially if somebody got hurt or they're not there or somebody evolves. You want to know those storylines. But to me, it's always been about game day. All right, what do we have today, game day? What do we expect on game day? I need to watch the peripheral, but less than guys like Dean and Rich. And these guys have been reading articles every day since the season ended, looking at next year's schedule and that. But when it comes to personnel, so like you bring up the quarterback race, and I know there's a favor in our eyes going in. The coaches, they don't do week to week tell us who the favorite is for the most part, but that's the thing is they're always prepared. So if they got to go 3 deep in a game, they'll tell you there's 3 guys ready to play, and I believe that because they've gone three deep in a game, and while the third guy might have not have had the same success that you would expect to have a starter, they're prepared. So one thing I know is that there's going to be a competition, and that's not coach speak. There's truly going to be a competition over who's going to be the starter for week 1 and for week 2 and for week 3 and for week 4. That's just the way it's been here under this regime, and I think overall the success is there. So it seems to be the right formula.
Yeah, Cody Worley's done a great job with the quarterbacks. He's back, and like you say, co-offensive coordinators with Drew Thatcher coming on and Matt Drinkall, and then you got Mike Vitti on the offensive line. With Mike Vitti and Matt Drinkall as offensive line coaches. I mean, I don't think you can get any more fired up for players, to be honest with you. And that offensive line is going to be key in this transition in the offense, right? So
right. And as I looked at that offensive line, I'm like, all right, where's the snaps and where's their experience? They've had that a lot in years, but they've also gotten banged up along the way. And getting banged up along the way is why these guys coming in this year have had the experience. They've gotten the snaps when they were underclassmen. So listen, I also think in the option offense, they were more likely to get banged up, when they were running that all the time. So maybe, and that's really just a personal opinion. There's probably nothing to prove that. We'd have to go find the stats, but I just think maybe this gives them a little bit better of a chance to stay healthier. Maybe that's one of the factors. I think the factor at the end of the day is about evolving and evolution and having some options and all that. But again, that offensive line, of course, offensive line is key up and down college football, high school football for that matter, right? Certainly pro football. And I think there's enough snaps on that line, at least to start, but it's going to have to be like in the past. Guys are going to have to be ready to step in. I mean, last year I felt like at one point, 4/5 of the starting offensive line was out, right? At least at one point last year.
Yeah, guys like David Hayward got a chance to play, and he comes back, and then you talk about experience with Booby Law, Jackson Filipowicz. You got Connor Fanukin there. Man, we can go down. Simon Dillinger, Shane Buckingham, Sam Barzak. These are all guys that you're talking about that have played snaps and that, and you got some young guys coming. I want to see a guy like David Hoyt. He's a guy who is really heralded coming out of high school. See him get a shot maybe at tackle. Who knows? It's preseason camp coming up. We never know. What do you think on the defensive side of the ball? Let's talk defense real quick. You talking about Nate Woody and just like, the guys coming back. I mean, yeah, you lose guys like Andre Carter and Marquel Broughton, who people know. But then I'm looking back, I'm like, they have a ton of guys coming back too. So, I mean, this defense should be pretty good. It should be up to what last year's was, maybe a little bit better. Who knows?
Joe Beckerly, our program host, talks a lot about like, what are the names we don't know now that are going to emerge? And you're going to be like, wow, where'd that guy come from? I know Brett Jarina's name we heard more of last year. We knew about him. I knew about him from covering his dad when I first started, but there was a name that as the season went on, I can think back to a couple of years ago where James Nautical, in our eyes, like he just burst on the scene. Like, who is that guy this year on the defense, right? That's coming through that you're going to say, wow, didn't think he was going to emerge, didn't hear his name that much, but look what he did and look how he's emerged and how he's dominating the stat sheet each and every week. Like, you got to think about it like that. Who are we know the proven ones. And here's one thing I know too, Nate Woody, and he had that star in Andre Carter, obviously. He can't lean on one player. He needs a unit. So if a guy's dominating the stat sheet, that's not always a good thing if it's one guy dominating, especially you never want a safety dominating your tackles, right? You want those guys, those interior guys doing it. So I think defensively, one thing I know is that Nate Woody is going to try and have depth. I think last year they had to go deep a lot in the secondary, right? And they got burnt a couple of times, but he's going to create depth. And when he can create depth, and depth is also knowledge of the system that he wants to run. So if he's putting a guy that's, so say third string on the depth chart out there or not showing on there, that they have the knowledge, depth, they need the knowledge to be part of that depth chart. And in Nate Woody's defense, he's got to educate, 30 guys out there that are ready to go out there and play 30 or 40 guys. And if there's a freshman that's going to dress and there's a chance that they're going to get out there, then that guy's got to be up on the system. So the things that Nate Woody does and that he keeps offenses off balance. And that's saying a lot for, good defensive coordinators. They keep offenses off balance, and Nate Woody does that.
Yeah, I think that, you mentioned Andre Carter, his position's kind of up for grabs. Like, is it going to be Trey Sophia? Is it going to be maybe Tyler Rafferty? That's something to watch in camp. And maybe those are guys that maybe you didn't hear too much of last year. That might be another guy I think to watch is Jabril Williams. That guy made some big plays on special teams last year. Can he take the next step up and get some time in the secondary? We'll see. Want to get a couple more before we let you go, Tony. One, I've experienced some really amazing moments covering Army football, and you've done it for a little bit longer than I do. And I know it's kind of a little bit of a loaded question, but one, what's some of your top moments as covering the team, and others? I mean, when you're a sideline reporter, you got to bear the elements a little bit, man, right? I mean, you were probably there for that snow game against Fordham in 2012, like I was, right? We slept in the press box that night. We couldn't get out of post. I mean, there's been some experiences. Maybe you could share a few with us if you don't mind.
So definitely, I would say top moment for me was the streak buster down in Baltimore. That one to me was special, and still when I watch it to this day, and that mob that was on the field at the end of the game, and knowing I was in the middle of it with Coach somewhere, I had to drag him out of the locker room to come back out. That's certainly a memory that I'll never forget. A lot of on-field memories in the Fordham game, certainly sleeping in the press box. I'll never forget that one. Going in the hallway just to get warm. Jack Maldonado, our engineer, falling out of the chair in the middle of the night. Bob Outer trying to get across, him and his wife Louise trying to get across the bridge. They had to come back. They couldn't get out. But like the off the field stuff, Bob Beretta, who had a great relationship with from day one, and just the off the field stuff when we get together for dinner, when we go out and Rich DeMarco is pontificating to us about some stats that we never even thought existed. Just things like that and the crew. But to tell you the truth, like I can remember with Coach Ellerson playing Louisiana Tech, I think it was down in the Cotton Bowl, and bad storms, and I'm sitting, and you talk about dealing with the elements. It was downpours. They sent us into the locker room, and I'm sitting in the coach's room there and just soaking wet. And Coach Ellerson coming in to joke around a little bit, and just he's like, lucky getting struck by lightning, and all that equipment on, like those sort of things. Those are the things that stand out. But also, there's also the things like you feel a connection to players. So watching Tyler Robinson go down last year, you're like, oh man, because you see the talent. But then I also think back to seeing some of the old players that I've covered over the years. I mentioned Joe Girino before. Now his son's playing, but just Johnny Goff was the first quarterback I covered, ran into him a few years ago. But then you have a connection to these guys that you're covering. Kelvin Hopkins, Ahmad Bradshaw, Mr. Streakbuster, right? Trent Steelman, the man who I wanted him so bad to break that streak on his own and to ride off into the sunset. And that was probably the most heartbreaking that I felt in a game as the sideline reporter. But that's how invested you were in just hoping that he broke the streak in that game, and just against Navy. First of all, I hate losing against Navy. I don't think that you can have ever rooted for Army or worked for Army and not hate losing against Navy. And Air Force isn't far behind it for me. It's pretty close. But those are the things on on and off the field, just by being around the program and feeling that it's a camaraderie, like I said, the fraternity with the media guys, right? It's just there's a camaraderie that I have with Dean and Joe and Rich and our engineer Danny, and even going back to Jack Maldonado that you just have. Those are the times. But I get to be around Army football. Like if you told me when I was 8 years old or 9 years old attending my first game or watching Army Navy, hey, 40 years from now you're going to be on the sideline, or discussing your 25th year of covering Army football. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm just hoping I can play a Major League Baseball player at that point.
Right. I always said it's an honor and privilege to be let through the gates of West Point and to be able to cover the team. All these guys have so many. They have their individual stories of their own. They're just kind of like some of them are just like kind of me and you growing up, Tony. They are. Sometimes we get into I did a story on a recruit recently. He said I realized that these guys aren't programmed. These guys aren't robots. No, they're individuals, and they're here that they took on an oath to play Army football and then down the road serve our country. Not everybody's going to do that right now, and I give the recruits, the players, the current players, a lot of credit for that. Hey, one more question before we go. This week, I think Friday, it was announced that the stadium renovations for Mikey are not going to happen this year. They're going to be postponed. So the 2023 home schedule, you're going to see Mikey Stadium as it is. And me personally, Tony, I don't want to see Mikey Stadium change. I know we have to, keep up with the times, but I like Mikey Stadium the way it is. So when this news came, I was pretty happy to say, okay, hey, my family might go see the Coastal Carolina game later in the season. My stepson's a grad, and then they'll see Mikey Stadium the way to me it's supposed to be in my eyes. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, then I go back to the evolution thing, right? You have to evolve, and I see, why they're doing it, and certainly it makes sense for a program. Listen, you've got to keep things going as a program. My first question was, does it mean we're back in Black Knights Alley and it's staying in the same spot with John Minko and Joe Beckley there for the Army tailgate show? Certainly, listen, I think with everything that's gone on, especially within the past couple of weeks, just in the floods and stuff. And I have no information as to tell you the truth. I read the headline and didn't even read any more of that, but I understand. And it's a preservation project. They are trying to preserve, obviously, the field and everything around it, but I understand what they're doing. I love seeing Mikey Stadium as it is, but I can also go back to when the south end zone didn't look like that either, or the north end zone. So I understand why they're doing it. Just keep that field intact, the tradition that is on Blake Field. And I remember, the old turf and just running out and coming out of that tunnel and just still the hair on the back of my neck stands up. That's what Mikey Stadium is to me. I have family that goes there every year. They look forward to it. They just want to make sure they're in the same parking lot. They don't want to walk farther, but that's tradition to them, and going to a game and just everything that surrounds it. And as long as they can get the Golden Knights to fly in and all of that. So, they're preserving tradition and history as much as they can, but at the same time, you got to evolve and modernize to a point. I mean, I'm the guy that, if they tore down Fenway and Wrigley tomorrow, I'm telling you, in 10 years, they would love the new modern stadium they got. But anyway, that's just me. I mean,
I'm not even like the history guy. I just like Mikey Stadium the way it is. That's just me. That's my opinion. One man's opinion, your opinion. And hey, it's been great having you on. Really appreciate your time, taking some time for us. September 2nd is the opener at Louisiana Monroe, right? You will be is it Ruston, Louisiana? Is that what it is, Tony? Is that where it is?
Some of these towns, like we see them and then we get there and my phone shows it as a different location. What's the proper address for this place? What's the proper town and city? So that's one of those. I just lean on Rich DeMarco. Rich, where are we going, Tennis? Maybe I'll ask that when we land. But certainly looking forward to getting back with everybody. And, I'm going to try and share a little bit more this year on my Twitter as I can, just kind of documenting a little bit on the trips, on the sidelines as much as I can. It's been, especially depending on the elements, as you talked about, whipping that phone out and doing some stuff. But certainly we'll try and share a lot of that. But I'm looking forward to that trip. Obviously, LSU is going to be a great trip for us this year. The Air Force game out in Denver, that'll be my first visit to that stadium. So looking forward to all that stuff.
Yeah, real quick, where can they find you on social media if you want them to like follow once you chronicle the stuff
So at
on
T
the road?
Marino on Twitter is probably where I'll be doing most of it. It's funny, I don't even know. I think it's at T Marino on Instagram as well. I'll be sharing. Mostly it'll be on Twitter this year. So at T Marino on Twitter, I'll tag it in the. I know you posted it on your Twitter. I'll tag myself in it there, or if you want to tag me along.
Awesome.
But people can
Yeah.
follow and try and answer some questions along the way. That at least what I know. I always say it was a line I got in the beginning. Tell what you can see with your eyes. If you can see it with your eyes, so can other people. So I try and keep it to that as much as I can. And we're always better off not knowing the speculation stuff. It's like, tell what you see with your own eyes. Forget about the speculation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks so much, Tony. Thanks for the time today. And again, follow Tony. We'll have his social media on a post on Twitter. Or is it X right now, Tony? Is it X? Is it Twitter? Whatever it is.
It's still Twitter. I still have the T on my iPhone here. So I did see somebody posted earlier that the X was up. Whatever it is, I'll be on it this fall. God willing, as they say.
Absolutely, absolutely. See you on the practice field, Tony. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Sal. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and goodbye.